Another massive day, another massive week in Canadian soccer circles. We've got another international day with Mexico. We've got Canadian Premier League playoffs, and of course, the Canadian Championship final in Montreal on Sunday as well. We'll talk about all of that on this edition of Waking the Red Weekly, presented by Footy Talks. My name is Mitchell Tierney, and ahead on today's show, big clash with Mexico coming up. So we'll chat with Oliver Platt of OneSoccer. He's live from Edmonton to get you set for the game today, as well as I'm sure many other topics. But first, as always, the main men, Jeffrey P. Nesker, Michael Singh. What's up, boys?
Massive week again. I said this in the past, but these national team games now, there's a completely different energy around them. I don't think it's an energy. I don't know, Mitch, you'd probably be able to speak best to this. I don't think it's an energy any of us have ever felt before. When games like this come around and watching that game on Friday night, I tweeted this out, but it felt like all of Canada was watching. I saw some numbers also being thrown around on Twitter, which was spectacular. Really rivaling the Leafs and Flames game, which is absolutely absurd.
Beating them. Absolutely.
I think it ended up being rivaling them because he forgot to include the West numbers from Calgary, but still, it goes with that. Still, the point is that they're up there and people are starting to take notice. People are starting to care. I turn on Sportsnet, SportsCenter, and I'm seeing previews of this match and people teeing up this match. It's talked about really all over Canada, and I couldn't be happier, man. I couldn't be happier. It's about time.
Yeah, what did
Tej say?
That never happened.
Yeah. What did Tej say? That this is like Shark Week for John Herdman appearances and hits all over the media. And I don't know about you, but I turn on any of the Canadian news channels and I'm guaranteed either a Molinaro or a Cloakey or an Ollie maybe. Like it's just or even you, Mike. It's just everyone's doing hits. It's nuts. It's the vibe
Even
is so insane.
What does that mean? What's that?
Well, just because I see you every day. I see you every day, so it's a surprise when I see you on my big news broadcast.
No, man, well. Just to be mentioned alongside those guys is an honor, Jeff. So I appreciate you throwing me in there at the end. But man, I gotta shout all of those guys out because the amount of work that they're doing to cover this national team just absolutely spectacular. All of them are friends of the show, and they've been doing this for a very long time. So I'm happy to see it kind of come around where people are starting to really, take even more notice of them, even the casual soccer supporters. So it's great to see.
Yeah, and they're super giddy too. I mean, I think you all saw the tweet where they were doing an over/under on Adam Jenkins making the length of the Commonwealth pitch.
That was impressive. Running
like I mean, I wear Blundstones every day, man. That was impressive. I would have done a faceplant for sure in that. So yeah, very very impressive. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I am seriously regretting my decision not to get my ass on a plane and spend a week or so in Edmonton. Looked like a hell of a time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's obviously been a lot of talk about Edmonton over the past couple of days and over the past couple of weeks. And again, I think Mike always says goalposts are moving, and I think that's again one of the things that we can talk about in terms of this, where Canada wins their game in Edmonton and there's still hand wringing over, like the surface didn't provide them an opportunity to play a beautiful game or like play to their abilities. And at the end of the day, and World Cup qualifying, they got the 3 points, I think. And look, it wasn't against Costa Rica. It wasn't a perfect effort by any means. It was maybe, especially in light of the Panama game and the way they just thoroughly dominated that one. I think it wasn't maybe quite to the same level, but again, there was never really any doubt in that game that if a team was going to win it, it was going to be Canada.
That's the expectation now, Mitch. Mm-hmm. That's like the bare minimum now, and I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's where we should have been. And I want to find that episode because I want to find that clip. But I remember telling you guys this, I want to say 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. And I truly believed at that time was Canada is a dark horse to not only finish top 3 in the group, but they're a dark horse to compete with the United States and Mexico for that second spot, even that first spot. And I mean, to see it play out like this, I'm not sure if I thought it would happen like this quickly. they're the only undefeated team left in the CONCACAF region, which is
Yeah.
quite remarkable because I don't think anyone would have guessed that or predicted that, especially considering that they've played Mexico away, they've played the United States away. They've had some really tough matches, and for them to be sitting where they are right now, I mean, it's a win all around for Canada. And like I mentioned off the bat, like the whole country is now taking notice of this team. Like this, enjoy the wave, everybody. I've mentioned this a couple times, but enjoy the wave because it's not going to be this nice clique that we have anymore. It's going to be mainstream, but it's a beautiful thing because that's something we wanted for so long. It's something this team has deserved for so long. These players have deserved for so long. And, I was reading an interesting John Herdman piece on Sky Sports News, and he sat down with an exclusive for them. And, he was talking about the ripple effect sort of this could have, not only for the men's game in this country, but also for the women's game. You get into a World Cup, there's that exposure, there's a lot of money that comes in, and really there's now a demand to push the game as a whole in our country further. And that's how you do it. It's by qualifying for these World Cups. So hopefully, the path, we could continue to stay on the right path here, and all goes well the rest of the way.
Yeah, no, certainly. And yeah, again, a huge game tonight for that reason. I mean, it feels like if Canada gets another result, they stay undefeated tonight, whether that's a draw or a win, like they're this close. They're this close after that. And especially, again, you look at the table, you look how close Panama is, but that almost seems a little bit, I wanted to bring this up. That almost seems, because I was looking at Panama's schedule, a little bit inflated just because Panama, they haven't gone away to US, Mexico, or Costa Rica yet. And they're playing Canada again. So just one note I wanted to make. We'll get to Ollie in 1 second here, but I do think that in a tiny bit of a way, Panama's had one of the easier schedules so far. So even if they catch Canada tonight, if Canada draws or loses, like I do think, run of games, Canada's in a really good spot right now.
That's a very, very great point. Absolutely. And I do want to go circle back to the Herdman quote because I thought it was really, really, really insightful. But we have our person of honor here right now. And and I think it bodes to invite them on in the reel.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go live to Edmonton here and
bring on live to Edmonton. He's probably heard that a few times.
Yeah. That's fabulous.
How are you doing, Ollie?
How's it going? Good, thank you. How are you guys?
Good, Ollie. Thanks
jealous.
Thanks
massively
for time,
jealous.
Man. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, so jealous.
You might be less so when you're indoors tonight and warm.
Yeah, that's fair. The weather here is not amazing either, so it's not like we're even saving too much. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places we could start here, but I guess let's start with the past here. Edmonton getting to host that first game against Costa Rica. What was that like in general in terms of both Canada and what that result means, and also just the atmosphere and everything that went into that game in Edmonton?
Yeah, it was a really great night. Not just the kind of game itself, where obviously the crowd was incredible, seeing that many people in a stadium supporting the men's national team, but also just afterwards as well. I went out to a couple of bars afterwards, and the whole city is Canada fans. Right, we couldn't get in anywhere. So just nice. to see like the national team really take over a place like this for a night was pretty cool. The game itself, I think it was a difficult one, right? Obviously the result was the most important thing, and Canada got the job done, so it's all good there. But Costa Rica came for a point. They didn't really have any interest in much more than that. It was difficult to play against them as a result. And, I don't think it was quite one of those nights that we've seen, like Panama, for example, where Canada breaks the game open and the crowd really responds to that and gets behind that. And it, feels like one you're going to remember for a long time. I'm hoping this evening with Mexico obviously being more of an aggressive team and coming out and playing, or we'll see, I guess. I don't know how they're going to respond to what they've flown into here, but I'm hoping it'll be a more open game, more of a back and forth game, and that'll get the crowd going even more than we saw last week.
Fantastic. I'm having trouble not chuckling because I watched that Adam Jenkins tweet this morning, and all I see when I see your face is just I'm smashing that under while he's running like a crazy person.
He's fast, man. We play soccer, and he's
Yeah.
annoyingly young still.
But Blundstones, man, I wear them, and I'm not an athlete.
Yeah.
I can barely make it to like a jog in those suckers. So
those blisters
I
must have
know.
been ridiculous.
yeah, well, when they're brand new, they're the worst shoes in the world. But when you work them in, they're absolutely amazing. But the first 2 weeks are atrocious. Anyway, Ollie, let's talk what everybody's talking about: advantage, disadvantage. Do you think? And again, the story isn't written on this yet, and I think a lot hinges on this game. But do you see this as an advantage for Canada, or do you think this was maybe over? Do you think maybe the desire to get the FIFA inspectors in and all of that other stuff and move the game around superseded a competitive advantage here?
Like looking at the weather today, like I really have no idea what's going to happen. Right, I'm trying to think through all the different scenarios of what this game could look like, and it's just, I don't know. The one thing I keep coming back to is I don't think it can be worse for Canada than it will be for Mexico, right? And Mexico's preparation has been slightly weird. Like they only got here last night. I don't think they've even been on the pitch yet. And the pitch, even when it was relatively mild compared to today last week, is not good. Like it's a bad pitch and it's difficult to play on. And it takes some getting used to. So I think if I had to guess, I would say I think there will be an advantage because I think the way Mexico play, they are going to need at least 20, 30 minutes here to get used to how this field plays, and Canada could take advantage of that. I also don't know how they're going to, respond to how cold it is and the snow and all of that. So, like I said, I think it's difficult to say, but I just can't see it being a disadvantage for Canada in any way. It might be a wash. It might be a game that just kind of gets written off a little bit because the conditions are too difficult for both teams. That's the worst case scenario. Okay. But I don't think it can be any worse than that. I don't think it's going to disadvantage Canada.
Do you think the worst case scenario is the game gets canceled? I mean, Matt Doyle just in the last 10 minutes said CONCACAF should low-key cancel it, which maybe isn't the most trustworthy source, but certainly it's out there. It's in the Twitterverse now.
I don't think it will be. They've covered the pitch, so I think they'll be able to get all the snow off it. And we've been told that it takes 5 days of -15 or worse for the pitch to freeze.
Nice.
So we should be okay. I'm not going to lie, I've been on the pitch and it feels pretty firm even before it got really cold. So again, it's not a good surface. I don't think there's any point in lying about that. It's not great, but I think it will be okay as far as getting the game played.
Nice. I love it. I love the way that Canada Soccer is branding this as well. I mean, Mexico, it has the Azteca, and I'm looking here at the Wake in the Red Slack chat, and we see the word Ice-Teca going around.
Love that one, I think.
Absolutely rule.
By all means, just give us a little shout out, Ollie. Yeah, so anyways, getting back to that, that's obviously the major talking point, and I feel like a part of that is the intimidation. Yeah, sure, when it comes down to it, it surely will make a difference, but even just heading here to Canada, all the rumors that people, hear about Canada, Canadians living in igloos, whatever it is, a Canadian wind or snowstorm, that must play some sort of effect on the Mexican players' minds heading into this match, which is why, I love it. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that too. Do you think that sort of plays with their mind a little bit?
Yeah, I think it could do. I'm kind of split in two minds on this. Part of me thinks these guys are top level players, and they've played in some difficult conditions throughout their lives. Whether when they were kids growing up or in various environments. When they've been professional players, and I don't want to kind of patronize some pretty top class Mexican players who I think should be able to respond and still play through this. But at the same time, you look at the way Mexico are as a team under Martino in particular now, and they're a team that likes rhythm, right? Pass, get players moving, and very controlled kind of rotations and things like that. And that's just going to be really tough tonight. I don't think it's going to be any secret that Canada will come out and press them and try and play really direct and really vertical and use all their speed. And on that front, I think it sounds like a game that matches up pretty well for Canada, given the conditions and how difficult it's going to be to get any kind of rhythm going. So we'll see. As I said, making predictions about this game feels incredibly futile for me right now.
No, for sure. I appreciate it. And my actual question is, I want to actually address someone on the team. And this is someone John Herdman was talking about a lot after the match, and it's Sam Adekugbe. And we can talk about, the performance that he put in on Friday night against Costa Rica. He was absolutely great, but his development, he's really come along and won a place on this team. Whether it is a rotation place or whatever it is, but he's earned Herdman's trust at playing that fullback position when that's arguably one of the positions that Canada have the most depth when you're competing with, Davies, Larea, Alistair Johnston, even obviously Tejan Buchanan as well. And for him to come in and earn a spot there, that says something about him. Can you just talk a little bit about Adekugbe and his ascension?
Yeah, he's come a long way since he was in MLS, I think, in particular, and even over the past year or so, and going to Turkey now he's taken another step. I think what they really like about him is that he gives them like a natural attacking left back, and obviously there's one player, a big player, who could do that and do that to a very high level, but they don't want to obviously use Davies in that role. It seems like anymore. They want to use him high up the field, whether it's as a forward or as a winger. And so having that option, Richie can do it, but he's right-footed, so there's naturally a bit of a difference there. Having a player like Adekugbe who can come in and really give you width and give you a quality from a left-back position and an attacking sense has been really valuable. So I think you look at the Costa Rica game, and they were quite keen in that game because Costa Rica had 10 days to prepare. They wanted to show them something different, basically, to what they've done so far. So we've seen them in that back three where Johnston stays deep and they build up from a back three. And they didn't want to do that again because they thought that Costa Rica would have prepared for that. So instead, they play Adekugbe, who gets forward down the left. They play Larea, gets forward down the right. They haven't really done that with both fullbacks being very, very aggressive and very attacking before. And it was something that, they felt could maybe surprise them a little bit. So just having different options in terms of the profile of players you can put in those positions helps a lot and keeps it fresh. And that's one thing Canada have been very good at, right? Is the tactical versatility. You don't really know what they're going to do game to game.
Yeah, this is obviously a hugely emotional game for Canada, given how the last two have gone. This is a game that they consider a big measuring stick for them against one of the huge teams in CONCACAF. With all that in mind, who's maybe a player you'll be watching for tonight to see kind of how they respond to this big occasion and this opportunity, Canada has in front of them to even potentially go top of the group?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously one that stands out is Atiba Hutchinson, not in terms of how he's going to respond, maybe because he's the most experienced player on the team, but he didn't start against Costa Rica. I think that was largely due to not wanting to have him go back to back on the pitch again. So I think he's going to start tonight. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. And, obviously there's all the significance of him taking the caps record from Julian de Guzman, which makes it a big night to begin with, but also just the way the game is going to kind of pan out. I think he's going to have a lot to do in that central midfield area against probably three Mexican players. In Canada usually only plays two. We'll see if Azorio comes back in. And just the influence that he could have on this game. He has that ability to almost be two players in there with the amount of ground he covers, the way he can go box to box, the way he protects the defense as well. He's going to need to have a really big night, I think, in that midfield. And Eustachio obviously as well, but I think Atiba comes back in and has a really big role to play.
All right. Well, there is another big game as well coming up on OneSoccer on Sunday that we'll end this with. That's of course the Canadian Championship, and an interesting one, of course, because two teams that will be disappointed with how their season went. I think Montreal, they slightly surprised people with how close they got to the playoffs, but they'll still be disappointed that they didn't make it. And then Toronto, of course, there's no rose coloring what happened there this season. So both these teams will really want this game in terms of, having something to look forward to or something to point back at this season for. So with that in mind, how are you feeling going into this matchup? And yeah, what's the preview?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think Montreal, I still think they're on the right track. Obviously disappointing to miss the playoffs, but I think they were better than they were last year. They took some good steps forwards, and they'll be feeling like I don't know if you can call you can't call the season a success if you miss the playoffs in MLS, in my opinion. But at least to finish it with a trophy and to feel like you're kind of heading in the right direction. And I think they would have been there if Kyoto had stayed healthy for longer than he did. They're feeling a bit differently to TFC, who want to win the game and want to start to get things back on track here. But I think regardless of the result, like there's got to be changes in this off
Yeah.
season, right? It doesn't make any difference to that. So I think you've got decisions to make on all three designated players. I don't know if you can do them all in one off season, but they're all there and relevant. And obviously a lot to think about in terms of the head coach and probably bringing in a new head coach as well. So there's a ton to go through. It's one of the biggest off seasons I think TFC has ever had. But certainly, if you can win a trophy and end this year on the right note, it at least gives the fans, I think, more than anything, something to feel like a little bit of positivity about after a really tough year.
Yep. Yeah. And look, we can hire Tata, because if we beat Mexico or get a draw tonight, he'll probably be looking for a job. So there we go. Everything's coming up, Millhouse.
Yeah, that would actually be a really interesting one. Michael, you always have a question after I say we've asked the last question. So you got any last?
Oh, buddy, I got a bunch in my back pocket. I wanna just quickly chime in and ask you about OneSoccer in general, and kind of how it's been like covering this national team with so many eyes now on you, and just the evolution of the broadcast behind the scenes and what's going into it. What's that been like for you, Ollie? And I see you're taking things in stride. You're doing a really good job. So I'm wondering how all of that has been.
Smashing it.
Thank you. It doesn't feel like it sometimes. It's been crazy. Obviously, like to have these games, and then to have obviously the partnership with Sportsnet as well. Now I think our audience was 700,000 or something for the Costa Rica game, which like is a different world to what you're doing when you're streaming, right? Streaming is still catching up in terms of the viewership numbers. There's no question about it. So to be on cable is a completely different thing, and very demanding for the whole company in terms of how much work goes into it right now with a very small group of people. But like obviously just enjoying it, and enjoying the fact that when you think about it, like we're not going to have games like this for quite a while. Obviously the World Cup will be massive, and those would be huge games, but in terms of having actual games in Canada at home, playing against playing with real stakes and against good opponents, it's not going to be qualification for 2026, so you're waiting for those 2026 World Cup games before we see something like this again. So it's really special, just trying to take it all in and enjoy it. And obviously it's been great for OneSoccer to have such an amazing year on both sides of the national team, coming out of the pandemic especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Ollie. I know it's a busy day for you, so we really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, best of luck with the broadcast tonight, and obviously enjoy it. I mean, it's another massive moment for Canadian soccer, so I'm sure you will. It'll be a
wait. Canada's playing a game tonight? What are you talking about? I better clear up my evening plans. Okay. Thanks, guys. Good to know.
Yeah, thank you, Ollie.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Cheers,
it.
Ollie. Good luck today, man.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Oliver Platt.
Of course.
So
Waking the Red alumni, guys. Waking the Red alumni.
Speaking of Waking the Red, the Slack chat is exploding because nobody else has got their V shirt except for you and I, Mitch. I didn't wear mine today, thankfully, because apparently you're the worst and everybody doesn't like you anymore. So
I'm on board with that. Yeah, but no, that's a good shout though. Like shout out to the Voyagers and everything that they've been doing to really create that atmosphere. You can hear it coming through the TV, and from everything that I've heard and people I've spoken to, it's special down there right now in Edmonton. Yeah. So shout out to them. They're doing an amazing job, and a lot of it is volunteer work. So for them to be able to do that is special, and we can't commend them enough for really, building that culture here in Canada.
Yeah, I think that's honestly been like my first reaction to the last. But every World Cup qualifying game in this final round so far is just like, even when it was the first 15,000 or whatever they could do with the limited capacity BMO, it's like, just look at that crowd. Like it sets the tone so well. Like, I don't like even, when the TV came on and they're showing Edmonton, you're just like, you're getting goosebumps because this isn't what it's been like for so long. And it just feels like, again, when we're talking about how big these games feel like that plays into it so much. Is like, these are big game crowds showing up for big games in Canada. Like, this is something we've never seen before, 100%. Certainly on the men's side. So
Mitch, they might fill that, or they will, back-to-back nights of 50,000 in the same city. Yeah. And I saw a tweet from Jeremiah Ocean, who is managing editor of SB Nation as a whole, He said he doesn't think there's a place in the U.S. that would be able to do that. Is fill the same spot back to back, 50,000 plus for World Cup qualifying matches. So that's just a testament to just how much support this team is getting. And as I mentioned, like it's on a national scale now, and we're not only seeing them, potentially come close to breaking a record tonight for people in the stadium, we're seeing them break records for people watching these games all around, and that just there's no greater measuring stick than that people are tuning in and paying attention to what's happening to soccer in Canada, which is such a great feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's proof of like something we've talked about for a long time, which is that this has always been a soccer country, right? Like there's never been any doubt that a ton of people in Canada watch soccer, but it's always been other soccer. It's always been the Premier League. It's always been the Bundesliga. But then all of a sudden, Canadians started popping up in those leagues. And I think a lot of people were like, whoa, wait a second here. And now all of those people are really starting to embrace the men's national team as well, because they've gotten to that level where, this team is so much fun to watch. Like even they're playing Costa Rica on a crap.
You can say it.
It's a crappy pitch.
Yeah, they're not going to take away your key to the city, man. Don't worry about
it. on a crappy pitch in Edmonton, like they're trying bicycle kicks. They're doing like all kind, like Sam Adekubi's spinning guys, ball rolling guys. Like this is just a fun team to watch in general, and like people are taking notice of that, and that's why you're getting these back-to-back 50,000. Crowds.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not comfortable. Like 50,000 people freezing their cans off.
Yeah,
right?
that
like
too.
They're not going for like a day at the beach. They're going for like an endurance 90-minute of endurance.
That's so
session,
Canadian,
right?
though.
Like,
I love it. That's so us, man. And
yeah, it really is.
And
really
you know
is,
what it is? Like people are starting to care because now they're starting to understand. And the big reason for them understanding is the amount of coverage that they're getting. And I mentioned this a couple times already, but I'm so happy that we're starting to see all of this preview, all of this teeing up of these matches on Sportsnet, SportsCenter, because now people are becoming educated about it. The average fan that turns on TSN or Sportsnet, they're now you go to sportsnet.ca, they go to TSN, you go to CBC. They're now the top stories on those sites because you hear World Cup, you hear Canada, you hear all the hype that's building up around them. Whoa, Canada can actually be in a World Cup, and they want to learn. And I'm so happy that is happening. And hey, it's been a long time coming, right?
I mean, I still think that there'll be a drop off, right? Soccer's not for everybody. It's not the North American mindset. I mean, there was one Herdman interview. I think it was the hockey guy that everybody loves, the whatever his name is. I don't know his name. Connor McDavid? No, Connor McDavid didn't interview John Herdman.
Oh, sorry.
No,
okay.
A sports guy.
No, I thought you were talking about the McDavid thing, but
yeah, but the guy was saying I hate soccer, and there's not enough goals, and I do think that will tear people away. I mean, Herdman had he didn't take the opportunity to say, well, soccer, it's not, those midfield battles are goals in themselves, right? Like all of that action that happens around the goals could be considered. Bob McCowan, that's the guy. That's the guy.
Sean Felix's Gene Principe.
Anyway, Bob came into it from a perspective that I figure a lot of casual Canadian fans are coming into it. The Costa Rica game for us, and again, this feels like gatekeeping, but we see the nuance and we realize that the pitch didn't help anybody. But for someone coming into that cold, if you pardon the very obvious pun, they may be turned off because soccer isn't a high scoring game, and it is all about the subtleties of the battles and that.
I feel like you're discrediting some of these people a little bit because
I absolutely am. I absolutely am, and I hope I'm proven wrong. You know what I mean? But
I don't think it's an end all be all there with what you're saying. I think a lot of people can adjust. But I mean, when you watch that game, you see the environment. I remember when Toronto FC had the liveliest crowd in MLS, I'd always take my friends there, people who never watch soccer. I would take my friends there and they'd have a ball of a time because of the environment that was there. They're not used to fans that are singing 24/7, chanting 24/7, creating that 100%. Atmosphere. And that's just a special spectacle to kind of take in by the lakeshore. And I feel like the same way with these national team matches. I know there's a lot of soccer or hockey guys that I grew up with. They would always watch like the Euro finals or the World Cup finals. And for me, these games are on the same level as those matches because we have our own country finally participating in those matches. So I wouldn't say that I don't want to discredit them and say that they can't enjoy it. But I get what you're
No.
saying. I
No,
get what you're saying.
I just think there's a barrier. Like all of that hype will eventually meet like the first filtration of people that are like, nah, this just ain't for me. Like, and you have to adjust for that. That being said, yeah, the game day experience papers over a hell of a lot of cracks in terms of excitement, and never ever underestimate the power of a winning team in attracting Joe Public as a super fan, right?
You finally get a chance to watch Alphonso Davies too, right?
Yeah.
And also, what I'd say is this, like, another thing that people are buying into is this is such a Canadian team. I mean, first off, this team looks like Canada, which is something that's been well documented. Like,
very fair. Yeah,
from everywhere, be it like Serbia, like so many different parts of the globe. There's Canadian players with heritage from that.
Yeah, I
so
love
that's part of it. I don't think there's many other national teams, if any, that look like this, like the same level.
Well, because there's not a lot of nations that look like Canada.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair too.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, and another thing that I think a lot of people, and again, I frequent a lot of hockey people, so this is something that they attract to, but like they love the fight in this team. Like, and I'm mixed on that.
That's
too,
a very good point, Mitch.
Because I think Canada, like, I think there's going to be at least once in this World Cup qualifying cycle where they get themselves into a little bit too much trouble. Might be, fair enough.
Richie Larea.
Yeah, that's literally what I was gonna say. Like Richie Larea.
Well, suddenly Richie Larea's jersey sales went up 1,000%, and everybody in Edmonton has one. Yeah,
but I think people do respond to the fact that someone shoves Alphonso, and all of a sudden there's 11 Canadian shirts.
Love it.
The other team, I do think it's more positive than it is negative for this group, because I think that brotherhood that they've talked about just pours out when they're on the field, and that's a big part of it. And that's that is a Canadian kind of mentality, is that we stick up for our own, right? So that's been something that's been I think
it's been missing. It's been missing for decades, and I think maybe that's why there haven't been so many of those of that crossover, right?
Because that's something John Herdman talked about, right, Jeff? In that article, was that when he first came into the national team, it was a divided group. You had obviously, some of the Scottish people,
Garfield, what?
That was divided with, some of the other nations, and there's literally like physical altercations in training sessions of like scrums of Canadians going after each other. And John Herdman said that was one of the things that he needed to come in and address, and that's why I feel like we hear that brotherhood term thrown around so much, because it's from where they came. Where they came to where they want to be, and that brotherhood is kind of that identity in them, because that's not what it was before. And obviously,
what did Julian de Guzman say in his interview? Like, it was more of a vacation than an actual playing experience. When they got the call up, they were like, "Cool, I'll pack my my soccer kit and a whole bunch of board shorts and maybe my snorkeling equipment and get a couple sessions in." So, I mean, my respect for John Herdman is so humongous, it's unbelievable. And I'll circle back now, because that quote was bracing at first, where he said, and again, it's a bit of revisionist history, but essentially he said, he had seen the ceiling on the women's side with respect to funding. They were winning all kinds of trophies. They were increasing their visibility by leaps and bounds, but the envelope that he got on his desk, the funding year by year, never increased. And so he made the calculus: if we can get the men's team to another echelon, this will have a trickle down effect for soccer for both genders. And he was right.
Which said his heart is still with the women's team.
It's a horrible fact. It really is. It's not a good fact. It doesn't fill me with happiness, but there's a certain cold logic to it. In 2021,
money talks, right?
Exactly. And so, as bracing as that quote was, and as unfortunate as it was, because nobody likes to hear that from, to have those kind of fears realized, but yeah, I mean, we're doing great things for both games right now. It can't be ignored.
And that was his message to the men's national team too, is that they're not only doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the entire country and the game as a whole, for the women's team, for all the amateur teams, all the sport in this country in general. You get to a World Cup, the sport in this country naturally grows. It follows, because now there's more investment. There's people who care. There's people who want to get playing, and that starts with going to a World Cup. And
Yep.
if we can get back to, talking about tonight's match a little bit, Mitch.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
as you mentioned, like a result today. I mean, I still think that they have a really good shot now moving forward, but a result today, I mean, come on, guys, we're talking about it. We're
Yeah.
talking about it seriously.
Yeah, and
Yep.
what I partially love is like this is the closest I think we've ever seen Canada to CONCACAFing. Like like again the
This
story
is
on
some
this is
serious
the
CONCACAF.
story on this is unwritten, obviously, as Jeff said. Like the final
Yeah,
conclusion on
yeah.
this is somewhat unwritten. Although again, I think the fact they picked up 3 points against Costa Rica already makes this at least partially a success.
Sure.
With that being said, like the fact that Mexico hasn't been able to train on the pitch yet, the fact they're going into cold conditions, the fact that
Shout out
Canada's
to that
already
Unite girls team.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're told not.
That was Edmonton Scottish. That was
Yeah.
that was Jeff Paulus's new side. Yeah.
Yeah, so love that. Obviously, like again, this is stuff that Canada's been dealing with for decades. in
Forever.
CONCACAF.
Yeah.
So to have a little bit of our own revenge again, revenge is a dish best served cold, and Canada's doing that in
Yep.
spades.
Yep.
So I mean, again, the fact that Canada's been able to not only play one game but train on this pitch for a while, and you could see even towards the end of that Costa Rica game,
I agree.
they started to
Yeah.
figure this pitch out. They're playing some
Yeah.
balls with backspin where they jump back to guys. Like,
Yeah.
I think that gives them a distinct
Uh-oh.
advantage going into tonight's game.
Did I just lose?
Well,
Mitch?
not only I still got it, but not only the pitch, Mitch, but also, I mean, I think they've been doing this all along. They've been, if you think back to that BMO Field game where who was it on the sideline that grabbed the player, Daniil Henry.
Mhm.
Grab the player in the corner and just, I think it was against Panama perhaps, where you had the big like bench
Yeah.
clearance scrum, and they're bought into the fact that if they have to get dirty, if they have to play the CONCACAF way, they will do it. They're finding unique ways to do it. I mean, once a game you see whoever's in net go down injured. John Herman quickly calls his team over. You see a complete new tactical side go out. Like there are little things that are just happening that really Canada is going all out here in terms of doing whatever it takes to win, and I'm all for it because this is, as you said, Mitch, this has been happening to them for so many years, and I'm happy to see them take things in their own hands and take control.
Can we talk a little bit about how much of a legend Milan Borjan was in that game in general? I mean, every free kick Canada got late in that game. Do you know how far up the pitch he like all those free kicks were at least like 20 yards in front of where the actual foul happened. He just kept rolling it. And like, I couldn't believe he didn't get called on it. But yeah, like you said, Canada's finally starting to figure this out. I don't know why, like this is kind of tangential, but I was remembering the last time Canada played Panama in 2012. One of the funnier CONCACAF things I've ever seen was, I think it was Stamatopoulos, I think that was his name. He was like a back at the time, played a couple games for TFC. One of the balls came on the bench. You know those duffel bags where you like, or not duffel bags, but those like tote bags where you pull them with the strings?
Yeah.
He caught the ball in that, put the strings in it, and just tossed the ball behind him. And, like the Panama team lost it, but it was one of the funnier CONCACAF things I've ever seen. So I don't know why, but that just got like I just got reminded of that.
Yep. Can't buy those sweatpants, by the way. Everybody wants them, but you cannot buy them. There is a workaround though. Just buy the Nike training pants and a Canada patch and make DIY it for yourself. They won't be padded like a goalkeeper's pants, but I mean, we can't get a kit right now, and you thought you were going to get pants. bless, guys. Yeah.
No, it's honestly, all the build up, the matches, like everything that's going into it behind the scenes too. Like Canada's soccer's just done such a terrific job at everything. Like I feel like there's so much that's going on that like we don't even realize that they're doing to add to this experience, and for them to, have Edmonton sell out back to back, for them to create this atmosphere, for them to figure out that partnership, shout out OneSoccer with Sportsnet, get this broadcasted on our mainstream television networks I mean, it's really remarkable what's going on right now. Sure. And their socials have been killing it. Obviously, you had Justin Trudeau visit the team yesterday. I mean, like this is as big as it gets, and they're doing it the right way. So I love this, man, and I'm all in for the ride right now.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Really well said.
Well, we're 40 minutes into the show, and Toronto FC is playing in a cup final before we have our next show, which is kind of ridiculous, but again, just shows the impact that Canada soccer is having right now and how that's the leading story.
I love how
Yeah.
you said impact.
No, very nice. Yeah, I didn't even take that in, but
Yeah,
that sets me up well for remembering to not say impact for the rest of the segment. But anyway, the third time in the past 5 finals that Toronto FC will meet Montreal. Obviously, you can kind of consider it 3 and 4 because the TFC Forge one still hasn't been played. Who knows when the heck that's
before July 2022, bitch.
Yeah, right.
Before
Yeah.
July 2022.
Yeah. So at some point we'll see that game. But
some point.
1 p.m. in Montreal on Sunday. Unfortunately, no snow expected for that. I was kind of hoping, just everything consideed, it'd be kind of fun to see a Canadian Championship game played in the snow, but that's not going to happen.
Final, yeah.
Oh
well.
How are we feeling going into this game, guys? Because it is such an interesting one. Like, it feels like such a lull since the end of the season, and obviously with Montreal kind of disappointing at the end of the year as they did. It's a weird game for sure.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah, I don't really know what to expect because, as you mentioned, there's been such a lull, like since the end of the season. I mean, TFC obviously they started to look a little bit better. They started to look a little bit healthier, and we know they've been gearing for this Canadian Championship for some time. Whereas Montreal, that was not their priority, right? Their priority was making the MLS Cup playoffs and trying to get into that, but obviously that didn't happen. So now it shifts, and they're trying to get a bit of a consolation prize, which I mean a pretty good consolation prize.
Yeah, it's a pretty damn good consolation prize.
But
yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. One thing I'll say is TSC appear to have a healthy Josie Altidore heading into that match, and if there's one thing we know about Josie is that he loves playing Montreal.
Yeah,
and if TSC have Josie going, which I mean he's been in way better form recently than he was for really the
perfect
last
timing.
two and a half years.
Perfect timing. Yeah.
And I think as Justin Moore was on our show last week mentioning about how this is, the last time we'll likely see a lot of these Toronto FC faces.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of them want to go out on a really high note. A lot of them want to go out with that trophy, and they have something.
Patrick Mullins hat trick incoming, baby.
Oh my god! I hope Patrick Mullins does not see the pitch.
Oh man!
I hope we're not at that point. But hey, man, as I mentioned a few weeks back, on one game, winner take all, Toronto FC Montreal. I still like Toronto FC. I think that on paper they're the better team, and I think. If they have a lot of those guys, especially coming back from national team camp, and a lot of their players that are healthy and fit, then anything can happen really in this game, even though Toronto FC had a miserable season. So I wouldn't be surprised if TSC find a way to take this one home.
Are they training? I know they said they were going to, but we've heard nothing.
Yes.
Yes, they are training on a regular training schedule?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so are Montreal?
Yep. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why wouldn't
I think it's I don't know. It's Montreal. I think it's interesting that Wilfred Nancy got snubbed for Coach of the Year, and Brian Schmetzer got nominated again.
I wouldn't really call that a snub. I know a lot of people were calling for it.
Look at what he's done with them in one season.
Absolutely amazing job, but there's a lot of there's 3 nominees, right? Finalists.
Mm-hmm.
So 1, 2, no doubt, in my opinion, was Bruce Arena, Robin Fraser.
Yeah.
Yep.
No doubt.
But Brian Schmetzer, it feels like an afterthought. Why not nominate Nancy? I mean, we all know it's probably going to be Robin Fraser.
He missed the playoffs at the end of the day.
The thing is,
okay.
I'm not sure how
that's fair, Mike.
I'm not a player and or a coach, so I'm not sure how their ballots work. But the media ballots, you only get 1 vote.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's Schmetzer's more deserving than a first place vote for me than Wilfred Nancy is. I could see Nancy being a 3rd or a 2nd if you had a weighted ballot
vote,
like that,
a
3 vote. I could see him getting in, but if you're I can see more people voting Schmetzer as a first then.
Did you vote Schmetzer, Mitch?
I did not vote
voted.
Schmetzer. I voted
Okay.
But there's a few too. Sporting Kansas City had an amazing season. Peter Vermees is absolutely fantastic coach.
Fair.
What about the job Jim Curtin did? He lost Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie, and yet he's still able to finish second in the Eastern Conference table.
Not a
Like
bad shout.
there's so many like viable options for that spot.
You're right.
That
Chris
I don't
Armas.
think.
Chris
Yeah,
Armas.
yeah,
Sorry,
coach of the
that was
decade right
unnecessary.
there.
Yeah, goat, God, emperor of the decade. Yeah, indeed.
But yeah, Mitch, how you feeling about this game? How you feeling about Montreal, Toronto?
Yeah, again, it's an interesting one. One thing that you mentioned that I think is a good point, and kind of how I'm framing it a little bit now is like the different mentalities between the two teams. Where like Toronto's known for a while that they have been out of the playoffs, and this has been their big thing, and they played like it. Like we've seen, like their best two performances. I know the teams. Obviously, the caliber of opposition hasn't been up to standard, but the most dominant Toronto's looked has been in those two Canadian Championship games, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Like I think they've gotten up for those games in a way that they haven't for pretty much any other game that they've played in the.
It's a lot
in the past.
easier to get up for those games when
Oh,
they
for
mean
sure.
something.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly, yeah.
I mean,
months
it's
where you're
hard to
just-
stand up in sideways rain, but they did it. There you go.
Yeah, and scored 4 goals too. So
Yeah.
I do think like there's that from the Toronto FC perspective, and then from the Montreal perspective, it's a little more tricky for them where they have that decision day disappointment, and like it takes some time to heal from that. Where like they're gonna feel like, I know Toronto's season was obviously more disappointing, but like they're gonna feel that disappointment more right now just because it's so fresh.
Screaming hot fire,
versus
absolutely.
Toronto's was a longer, slower, more painful burn over the course of the entire season.
It's a confidence hit where Toronto didn't have any confidence left to be like take a hit, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Montreal's suffering that blow, as Mitch is alluding to there, and it's gonna take some serious mentality change for them to turn that around and right that ship. But hey, I think anything, one game, as we've seen so many times between these two teams, anything can happen. TFC, they're 7-time Voyageurs Cup winners, reached the finals I think the last 5 or 6 years, and the last time they did it against Montreal, I mean, Montreal got the better of TFC. And at that time TFC was the team that was dominating, and Montreal was just kind of there, vying for that Canadian Championship. But now the tables have turned, and maybe TFC can find a way to play spoiler in Montreal this time, which I mean, there goes that what was it, the Toronto bias thing, where everything happens in Toronto. I feel like Canada Soccer just had to put it in Montreal just to shut that crowd up.
Well, it's also like one day past it not being playable. Like I think November 20th was the cutoff for when it's too frozen. So one day is agreeable, but after that it had to be at BMO. So I think CanSoc kind of took advantage of not falling into the Ontario bias trap. I'm low key worried about this game, if I'm being honest, because I think Montreal blames us for missing the playoffs and has a certain anger about us getting the CONCACAF berth when they were the championship holders. Like they need more ammunition against Toronto, but I do think they're coming into this rather hot. And I'm there's a worry for me. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
There's no doubt Montreal's the favorites. No doubt heading into this match they're the favorites. But who knows? Who knows, man?
Yeah. Are they healthy, Montreal? Do they have everybody back, or are they still like short up top? Do we know that offhand?
That's good.
I'm going to assume that some people are coming back. Let's just assume that some people that they've had injured are coming back, and let's just assume that we're going to field maybe 2 DPs at any given time, right? Because I doubt Jefferson Soteldo is going to be
like 1.5
in this game.
Fine.
But 1.5 DP. So we're already at the same detriment we've been at all season. The season just passed in the rear view, right? Where the starting 11 that we field is definitely not going to be our best 11, which is a problem. And Montreal is going to probably be in a much better position to field their best 11. So, and they're at home, and it's been a couple weeks removed. Yeah. So I've got a genuine worry. Absolutely.
That's fair. I
Mhm.
mean, like we said, there's so much about that makes this intriguing, and all the factors we just mentioned makes this matchup that much more interesting. So,
Do
yeah,
you, sorry, do you as a TFC, if you're a TFC fan, would you feel better about this season if they win the Voyageurs Cup?
Absolutely.
oh yeah,
No question.
no
Without
question.
question. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I
I
think
think
Javi would feel better about it. I think the front office would feel better about it. I think it's a no-brainer. I feel like you're about to swoop in with like a take that's just going to blow our minds. So go nuts.
No, no, it's not a take at all. Like I'm wondering that just because, like as Ollie alluded to, no matter what happens in this game, there's going to be massive changes. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't maybe Javier Perez aside, but even that's a maybe. I don't think
Yep.
anyone's saving their job if TFC wins the Voyageurs Cup.
no.
So for me, like, yes, and obviously having that Champions League spot is a huge, huge addition and huge plus on
you see,
TFC season. But
okay.
other than that, it doesn't sugarcoat anything for me. It's that this team needs some significant changes, and I mean they beat York, they beat Pacific to get to this final, and it's one game.
Yeah.
So obviously, if they win, it's great. But for me, that doesn't change anything in terms of the mentality this front office should have heading into the off season.
I think it does, because if we win and we get that Champions League berth, that cuts our off season by half. So some of the moves that we wanted to make, we're not going to make because we need to field a roster for those early Champions League matches. So some of the guys that are on the bubble, say your Tsubasa Endos or your Patrick Mullins or your whatever the case may be, I did, of course. maybe they get a reprieve because there isn't enough time to pursue a deal for them because we've got bigger fish to fry before we need to be in Club Lyon or sorry, Monterey or wherever the hell we need to go, right?
I mean, if Patrick Mullins comes back at the same price as he was this season, we riot. I'm sorry, Patrick Mullins is a fantastic person, a great human being. Like he's a great person to have in the locker room, just not at that price.
Sure. But you do see my point, which is
I do see your point, Jeff.
You know what I mean?
Your point's taken,
if if we get that berth, then it accelerates everything that we plan to do, right?
But then again, then the question remains: like, would you rather prioritize the Champions League run, potential Champions League run, which we know will be really tough regardless, or would you rather prioritize taking the time to get this team right?
If we get the berth, we prioritize Champions League because you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Do you know what I mean? And we want that title. So, if I'm Ali Curtis, if I'm Bill Manning, and I win the game on Sunday, then it changes everything. And yeah, I do think some bubble players maybe get a reprieve just simply to have warm
can't say
body.
I agree.
Yeah,
I can't say I agree.
I think at that point you bring in some of the young guys or figure that out. Like,
I mean, it worked against Club
I'd
Lyon.
rather-
Remember Club Lyon, guys?
Yeah.
So we at least got one round where we can play the kids, and then we've got to make all of our moves. Speaking of moves, I'm segueing you, Mitch.
Such a good transition. But I do have one more point to say.
I
need to come back. I need to come back at Jeff because Jeff does this to me all the time and cuts off.
I know it's becoming
so. I'm returning fire, but it just quickly reminded me of that Greg Vanny quote that he got absolutely eviscerated for, where he said one time that sometimes it's good to not qualify for the Champions League because then you can have a proper off season. I think he said that before the 2020
You're
season.
100, yeah. 100%.
Well, that's when they didn't qualify.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's easy. It's definitely easier to say.
He did say that though.
Yeah. But
there is truth in that.
Yeah, there definitely is some truth in that. That the off season does become easier when it's longer and when you have time to ease into it versus just like Jeff said, going to some crazy altitude and running out a bunch of guys. So
exactly.
So that is something to definitely keep in mind. But a big part of this off season will, of course, continue to be the chatter around Sebastian Giovinco. I don't know if I have too much more to add on this, but there is confirmation that the talks are continuing between his agent and Toronto FC. Salary continues to reportedly be the sticking point in all of this. So I guess we'll see. Anyone have any opinions
I
on
think
this
I
since
think the
last
deal
week?
is done, and this is shenanigans. I think the deal's been done for a long time, and this is pure shenanigans, and they're just trying to create drama where none exists because a column has to go out every week. But I do think that this is a done deal. And I don't think money was ever an issue, but that's just me wanting to believe in this redemption arc so badly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I will cry if it's proven that the guy that left for more money came back expecting more money, because my God, that just means that there's a rot in the club culture that I didn't expect at all. So I don't like it.
In a weird way, man. I agree with Jeff. In a weird twist of events, I actually agree with Jeff here. I think that.
All right, let's wrap up the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, seriously, something's going
We're
on.
done. Yeah, we're done. Yep.
No, I actually think that there's some truth to that. I don't think it's fully done. I don't think all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But
Sure.
but something's happening.
Yeah.
Something's
I
happening.
mean, I think maybe the contention was
said
amount
that.
to years, right? Like maybe he wants a 3-year deal at a really low price. And
Yeah,
like,
I don't even know.
Can we do
I don't even
one
know the
Sebs?
finer
Like,
details.
Yeah.
But I like he wants to come back here. TFC would love to bring him back, obviously at the right place. I think Steve
Yeah.
Leffy was reporting that they're taking it as a courtesy to him. But I think if at the right price TFC get the guy, then they're absolutely gonna go for it.
Without question.
And Jeff, we said this even when the report first came out that that they're too far apart in numbers, and there was no deal that was going to happen. Like we said we weren't buying it because
I never bought it.
this happens. Yeah. We've seen this saga happen so many times, especially with this particular player. And
Yeah.
for me, like telling you guys, like when I saw him, obviously when I went to the game, and that did not look like a guy who was just visiting. Like he looked like he was more than comfortable here and really getting to know
he was. Yeah, he was taking measurements for his locker so he could keep it up with
obviously
Bluetooth speakers and stuff like that. Yeah.
I could be reading too far into that, but I mean, he could have signed anywhere by now, and he's
there's so much
to continue to
over the
pursue
player,
this.
right? Like even you retweeted his Instagram post, right, where he's like back home. And people were like,
he knows what he's doing.
We're just mining it for details. Like it's, he lives here, so it doesn't mean TFC's his home. And it's like, well, of course, Captain Obvious. But he's, this is a guy from the Chris Mavinga school of cryptic social media tweets, right? And I mean, Graham is talking about Insignia, and he's saying, I doubt that happens. We could afford to pay him $10 million a year. His cap hit, once he's in the DP range, we could pay him $1 billion a year, and it still pulls that amount out of his salary cap. So, at that point, it becomes, what does the player want? What does the player want? But this is the benefit of having deep pockets, right? When we talk about MLSE's deep pockets, this is what we mean, where you can be roster compliant and then blow your brains out. Like spend
this would be on another level, though.
Yeah.
This would be taking another step forward, which we haven't seen MLSE do yet.
This would break the world, man. This would break the world in a way, almost in a way of what paying Seba that 11 million that he wanted a bunch of years ago would have broke the world. Like this will break the world. And there's no guarantee.
But you have like moves like Ibra, Thierry Henry, David Beckham that obviously have been a lot more substantial than what this would be in terms of financial.
That's old school MLS. I'm more mean that this breaks the world in that it would be on the books as opposed to like the Blaise Matuidi special where he's got 10 condos that are worth more than that are worth more than $10 million, but he's getting paid peanuts in the press, right? This would be MLSE saying nope. We're going to do this above the line. We're paying him a European rate. We're still roster compliant. Game on the rest of the league, right? Like that's what I mean when I say it will break the world, because it's not about underhanded deals anymore. It's about deals right above the line. If you want to, you got to put up and shut up, right? Like, the player's 30, but the way that this deal would be structured is a clarion call to the rest of MLS without question.
Well, yeah, I think there is legitimate interest there from TFC and Insigne, but with that being said, like there's it's tough to convince someone to make a move over to Toronto, over to North America when you're playing in one of the highest levels in Europe. You're still in the prime of your career, and you have a potential World Cup to compete for, right?
Do you think that that's overdrawn now? Do you think that that's people
No.
thinking
No.
post?
No, I think that's
you really
legitimate.
do think that it's a legitimate knock on this forward who's scoring goals for fun? You really think he's not going to get called up to the Azzurri because he's playing overseas?
Well, we've
And
seen
that,
There's presence. There's
no, I know we've
precedence for
seen it,
that.
Mitch. I know we've seen it, but do you
Yeah.
think that we're maybe hedging our
But
bet
why
too much
risk
on the
that?
past?
Why risk that when I'm sure he has lots of plenty of offers elsewhere? Like he can make that move over to North America when he's 33, 32. No problem.
I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying what's to stop him from making the move now and then being an absolute, like if he
It's
goes
that
to
risk.
take
It's a
interest-
risk.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
it's still the mentality. Like it's still gonna take a long time for this to change. I know by this point we were supposed to be, or MLS was supposed to be a top 25 league in the world, or sorry, not top 25, top whatever,
because
5
they
league
did.
in the world. Or
They
whatever.
are top 25.
Whatever.
They're absolutely.
Yeah.
in
Oh
the
yeah,
top
absolutely. Yeah,
25.
no
Oh, yeah.
question about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where that
Yeah.
number came from.
No, I
Knew
think
this shirt.
Garber said.
But,
I think Garber said like top 1 league or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you remember the Chicharito interview where he like cried when he was going to MLS because he felt like he was
That's
retiring.
such a fair
Like,
point.
like-
but also he's so old school, and he was crying to his dad, who's even more old school, right? I'm worried that
I know, but
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's still a mentality that exists. It's like
I'm
if
not
you're
saying it's
going to
gone.
MLS,
I'm just
it means
I'm just
you're-
saying it
yeah.
may be a lot less than what people are
Mm-hmm.
You know, Chicharito maybe didn't have to cry about it, right? But yeah, no, I don't think it's disappeared, but I do think maybe we're giving it a bit too much credence, right? Because like if the Azzurri coach is like, no, you play in North America, you're not going to be on my team. You're scoring 1 million goals a game, but you're not good enough. Maybe he's not a good coach, right? Like that just seems
it definitely reflects.
like,
I would definitely reflect more on the coach than it would on certainly anything else. But it still exists.
World Cup only happens once every 4 years.
Yeah.
If there is any sort of risk involved in making that move over, then it's a legitimate concern.
I don't disagree.
Especially coming off winning the Euros, like they'll be one of the favorites going into this World Cup just because. Of
Absolutely.
That.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's a deep Italy squad too, as we've known for years. Like it's not like Insigne is a very, very good player, but it's not like if they lose Insigne that they're losing the whole World Cup. Like they have Italy's a roster is particular that's made out of a lot of depth. There's no like real one star on that team. So again, it's another risk that's involved. And at a World Cup year, if as a player that's what you want to do. You want to play in the World Cup. I think everyone grows up dreaming of that. So
of course. I just find it so hard to believe that the league we support has that stigma, that level of stigma attached to it for that top line elite talent, because then it's not about opening up the salary cap. It's not about letting teams spend more. It really is about changing that mentality, right?
And Jeff, you could be right. He could come over to MLS and he could easily find his spot in the World Cup on that Italy roster. But there's always that if, and I think that might be one of the things that's tough right now.
And I think
look at what Graham's saying right here. Week to week, the travel for him playing in MLS would be much more taxing than traveling within a European country. Yeah, absolutely. That can't be undervalued. But look at what our Canadian men's national team top line players are doing. Right? Is that it has to work both ways, right? We can't celebrate one and then discount the other, right? So
I don't think it's I don't think it's getting I think it's certainly getting better, and we've seen that. We've talked about Ryan Gold, we've talked about Luis Sarajo, like these two guys who are in their prime coming over from top European teams. Like that didn't happen before. So it's definitely getting better, but it's still, for these top guys, it's still definitely a factor.
Exactly, and that means that it's not simply a matter of money that's precluding them coming to apply their wares over here. It's the impression of MLS, right? Which is something that we don't talk
what would
enough
help
about.
with that reputation. Canada qualifying for the World Cup, guys. Canada.
But I mean, the United States have been qualifying since the league began, right? Other than that last flame out, they've had a much better record of qualifying for World Cups, and it still hasn't increased the viability of MLS,
Oh, I
right?
think it
I
certainly
think it's
has.
definitely.
Well,
I think
no, it
definitely
has, but we're still talking about that stigma here in 2021,
Sure,
right? So
but
it hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, that takes time. As we all know, European soccer fans are
Yeah.
tough.
And they've got
They take a
100
long
something
time.
years head
Yeah,
start.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're stubborn, and it takes time to convince them.
Yeah.
Again, that's something that the Canadian men's national team has had to overcome for many years, and we're just starting to see that breakthrough. So it's kind of the same with MLS.
Baby steps.
Such
Baby
a great
steps. Let's
step.
qualify for a World Cup before we worry about
Yeah.
signing Insigne.
I love
like
that
it.
shit
I like
from
it.
Ryan.
Yeah.
If
If
Italy
Italy
qualify,
qualifies.
that's
That's
such
true.
a good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. They're in a playoff now. They have to.
Well, let's finish up then with the last Canadian soccer thing on the agenda we mentioned, and we won't go too long on this because we have gone long in general, but the Canadian Premier League semifinals. We'll talk a lot more about the final once that gets confirmed on a future show. That'll definitely be
absolutely
a big topic.
What
for
stupid
us.
scheduling! Holy crap! Unbelievable.
fair.
TFC at 1, Forge at 3. And let me tell you, I gotta watch both of them at home because the time is just too tight to get to Hamilton to see that semi.
That's true. I didn't even consider that when I was when I was looking at the schedule this week. Like that's super unfortunate. Definitely.
It's pretty unfortunate.
So paint the picture here, Mitch. Who's matching up here?
Well, we'll start with Forge, and they're playing York United, who have been a nice little surprise this year in terms of I think just being a young club, like kind of prioritizing a lot of younger players, under 20 players. Guys like Lowell Wright who have come through instead of the past guys, Joe DiCaria, Manny Aparicio. Like they let a lot of veterans go this summer, so the fact that they qualified for the playoffs at all is like a really good indicator that they're doing something right in York, I think. And like that's
I agree.
That's definitely a step forward. They're going to get smashed by Forge. Forge is probably still the best team in the Canadian Premier League. They're
going to get absolutely smashed by Forge.
They've proven that time and time again. Obviously, the CONCACAF League qualifying for the CONCACAF Champions League itself, like that's a massive step for Forge. They're going to come in confident and hungry for this one. So I mean, I don't want to discredit York, but again, they've done a lot of good things. But yeah, I think Forge.
Smash them.
Forge is the favorite for that one.
They have all the forwards. Forget about it. Forget about it, guys. Just yeah.
The Saturday one
others.
Super interesting. Like that one is the marquee. Yeah, because those are two teams where like either of them loses that game, they're going to be massively disappointed because both these teams see themselves as the champion. Like they see themselves as the best team in the Canadian Premier League. Cavalry's proven that the past couple of seasons with how they've played in the regular season, that they're a top club, and Pacific's had an amazing year. I think they have maybe the best roster in the Canadian Premier League. I know that's a question.
It's still Forge. But it's still Forge.
Jeff, your Forge bias is showing just a little bit.
But that'll be an amazing match. And those teams, like they both play good soccer, and they're both really good soccer. Sides. Yeah. So that's gonna be a great
call it, Mitch. Prediction: who wins?
I'm gonna say Pacific. I think Pacific wins the whole thing. To be honest,
do you really?
Yes.
Nah, I'm looking.
Jeff, I wonder who your pick is.
Yeah. I got a spot on my wall for the next scarf, guys. So yeah.
Let's see. What a fantastic year in general, though, for the Canadian Premier League. Like what an amazing year. And I think what helps though, guys, is the history. Now we have years now to compare this year to, and those rivalries are forming. Like we talk about these teams in this light is because of what we've seen in the past. Like we talk about Forge and Cavalry, like could they be in the finals for a third straight time? And like you said, Mitch, like Cavalry and Pacific, they both look at themselves as like they're the best teams in the Canadian Premier League. And that's a legitimate shout because they both genuinely believe they are because of what they've done in the past and what they're doing so far this season. Like this semifinals right now is kind of mouthwatering, and I'm excited to see how it plays out because honestly, I don't know how it's going to go. Like you guys talk about Forge, obviously they're the heavy favorites against York, but man, that York team has pulled off a few surprises this season.
They sure have.
I don't think it's a lock.
The danger of a young team, right? Sometimes they can come out of the gate just pummel you. Like if they're feeling themselves and they get the confidence, they can run roughshod with you, but it won't happen. It's not happening.
No, I love the parity though, and I love the competition. And hey, it's they
it's
played
been a
good
great
soccer
year
this
for the
season,
CPL, and it's
great
been
year.
unbelievable year for the Voyageurs Cup. Just unbelievable. A
Voyageurs Cup,
fantastic
unbelievable year for Canada
yeah.
soccer,
Yeah.
and a horrible year for Canadian
Toronto FC.
Yeah, for everyone that's not the Vancouver Whitecaps.
Yeah.
I really don't think there's a better way to end the show than that.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's a pretty perfect spot to wrap up. Like
Didn't
I
even
said,
mention the women's team winning the
Yeah,
gold medal
oh my
too.
goodness. Yeah, that's
Yeah, well, when you said
that
Canada
leads that
soccer,
list.
you
It was encompassed
didn't
of all of
gender
it, but
it, so,
I feel like they
yeah.
deserve like their own shout out because oh my god,
They absolutely do.
They won the gold medal, guys.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, we will talk more about the Canadian Premier League final. It just with everything that was happening this week. Again, we went 40 minutes without talking about Toronto FC playing in a cup final. So that tells you kind of just what and how much is going on right now. But we'll wrap things up.
Hold on, Mitch. I gotta interrupt you again. Score
Yes.
predictions tonight, boys.
Ooh.
Score predictions.
2-1
I don't do
Canada.
predictions. I was on
2-1
Scooter.
Canada.
Yeah.
You're
I was
Mitch, man.
Yeah.
You're never the guy that's ever always like going out on an edge there,
No.
trying to. Yeah, oh, wow.
I'm feeling
Here comes Mike's
tonight.
4-0. Let's go, Mike. What's yours?
Imagine. I got
Believe, Mike.
I got 1-1. 1-1.
All right. That's
You
fair.
got 1-1?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do numbers because I don't want to jinx it, but I will say I think Canada's going to win.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's our predictions. Yeah, thanks of course to Ollie Platt for joining us. He'll be there tonight. You can make sure to watch him on the OneSoccer broadcast and hear him steal our Ice Tekka thing, and hopefully give us credit for that. But yeah, absolutely. Cheers to all of you for watching, listening, interacting. On behalf of Jeffrey Pinesker and Michael Singh, have a great week, everyone. Go Canada.